Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the first installment of the IPRRG webinar series. If you don't know me, I'm Frank Kosh, and I'm the Communications Officer for the International Pest Risk Research Group, known as IPRRG for short. If you're a member, you know what we're about. If you don't, I recommend you check out our website, pestrisk.org. But as a short mission statement, what we do is we're all about improving pest risk modeling and analytical methods. And well, I think it goes without saying that all of us in IPRRG and just the world more broadly, we've been through a difficult stretch, and in particular because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we haven't really enjoyed many chances to engage as a group. And most notably, I think, is that we had to postpone our annual meeting that we intended to hold in Nairobi this past September. And as a member of the executive committee, all of us together on the committee, we struggled with trying to figure out what was a good way that we could engage with the membership and sort of the pest risk community more largely. And although virtual events aren't a perfect replacement for in-person engagement, we think there's still a useful way to share and communicate ideas, and that's why we started this webinar series. So, our plan will be to have these webinars, like this, have one every month for the next several months. As the communications officer, I'm going to do my best to share announcements that'll have dates, times, speakers, topics. I'll put them, I will send them via email. I'll put them on the website, put them on Facebook, Twitter. As you get those announcements, please feel free to share them and promote them. We want to have, nice big audiences if we can. And also, please bear in mind that this is our first try at this, so the results today may be a little imperfect. Because this is a bit of a learning exercise, and we're going to keep working on it. But, I'm not going to say too much more about the series, because actually our first presenter is going to talk about that as part of his presentation. And, I think, so our first presenter is Darren Kriticos. He's current chair of IPRRG. He volunteered to present first, which I think was very noble of him. And I think Darren's reputation probably precedes him for many of you, but if you don't know him, let me give you a few details. Darren's a principal research scientist with CSIRO and an honorary professor at the School of Biological Sciences at the University of Queensland. His research is centered on developing and applying ecological models to study invasion biology and pest management under current and future climates. And his broad interests span a range of applied ecological questions in fields as diverse as biosecurity, climate adaptation, food security, and food safety. And Darren believes strongly in the value of developing and applying generic solutions to solving ecological modeling problems. This is reflected in his efforts to develop Climex and Dimex version 4 and the collaborative Climond climate data repository for bioclimatic modelers. His present efforts are focused on developing real-time pest forecasting systems. I'm going to leave it at that. And it's important that Darren he's not only the current IPRRG chair, but he was a founding member of IPRRG and has attended every annual meeting, although one of them was by teleconference. So that's the introduction. I do want to give a few general reminders, maybe some ground rules before we get going. One is you won't be able to ask questions via audio during this webcast, so if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. I'm going to be monitoring that chat, and I will read the questions to Darren during the question and answer session that we'll have after he does his presentation. I think we're going to put in a poll question for you to answer as well. That's going to be on the side of your webcast, your WebEx interface. And maybe most importantly, this webinar is being recorded. This will be true of all webinars in the series. We're going to provide details later via our website about how people can access the recordings. Give us a little bit of time to get that posted. And finally, you don't have to be an IPRRG member to view these webinars, but we do encourage you to join. It's free. Just visit pestrisk.org. All right, so I think that's all I have as far as an intro, Darren. So if you are ready, I'm going to put myself on mute and let you take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Frank. Welcome everybody to this seminar session. So welcome to the webinar series. As Frank said, that the COVID-19 pandemic has sort of really put a hole in our activities. For IPRRG are mostly centered around a single annual meeting. So we're looking to come up with something as a replacement to give us some connection during the pandemic. You can find out more information about upcoming webinars at this URL on the pestrisk.org website. And the idea here is we're going to be putting presentations which are topics of interest to IPRRG members. They're all going to be around pest risk research. Now, if you've got any ideas for topics or speakers, please send them to melanie@mgtuffin.com. It's free, so anyone can access the webinar series. Now, because the presenters are going to be coming from all around the globe, the timing of the individual presentations will vary from presentation to presentation, but they'll all be available for viewing at your leisure. The duration will change. We're going to try and keep them relatively short, so 20 to 40 minutes maximum, and we'll make them available. Now, as Frank said, please use the chat function to ask questions. The upcoming presentations, so just to give you a feel for what we've got Matt Everett from DEFRA in the UK, talking about the risk assessment for biological control releases. And you can see the others. So we're filling in some details. The exact dates within any month will vary. So we'll negotiate those with the presenters. We're not locked into a monthly schedule, so we can have more than one each month if people are keen. Okay, and moving on to the model database, so the topic of this presentation. So just to give you the overview, the pest risk models are key elements in global biosecurity. They're used to go and identify pest risk areas. So it's not just an academic exercise. This is part of IPPC and World Trade Organization procedures that go and build these pest risk models. Our risk assessments may or may not need to be completed rapidly, but often there is. So as pests spread to new jurisdictions, you've either got a choice of finding a pre-existing model if you're lucky, and it's fit for purpose, or you've got to go and develop one from scratch. So the problems we've got, the early pest risk models and maps were published in peer-reviewed journals. They came from the research domain, and because they were published in research in these peer-reviewed journals, they were able to be discovered, and the peer review process created a measure of quality assurance to the models. Now, as that technology matured and became more mainstream, the biosecurity agency started crafting models in-house. Now, one of the problems with that is that more models are unpublished and that may only be available in the grey literature. So there might be a lot of the description of the model and its underpinnings for those agencies aren't necessarily as important as the end result and what it then gets applied to. One of the consequences is because they're sitting in the grey literature or or may not have seen, may have been shared outside the biosecurity agencies that generated them, they're less accessible or discoverable by other risk analysts elsewhere in the world. And so to find them, you may need to be using a network of contacts to go and find that someone else has gone and worked on a particular pest. Now, most of the underpinning models are global in nature, but the way the risk, because we're using bioclimatic models mostly, the models, the underpinning analytics, algorithms and so forth, mean that the results, you understand where over the entire globe a pest could spread to. Now, the results may only have been generated for one particular jurisdiction or area, say, the European Union, for example, because that's the agency that generated them was interested in the risks there. But the underlying model is likely to be applicable globally. So we've got the potential there for this efficient repurposing of the models by different agencies. So sticking with the European analogy, the Europeans generate the model, and someone in Africa finds they need that to go and understand the potential distribution of that same pest in Africa. If they can get hold of the model generated by the European agency, they can use it for their own purposes without having to go and develop that model themselves. Now, there's potential global equity notion to the sharing, where agencies that are sophisticated, well-funded, can be going and supporting agencies that may not have the resources to develop those bioclimatic models themselves, and without doing it, without any extra effort. So it's just about sharing. Now, so what were the problems that we're sort of facing? That the pest risk situations can arise quickly. So where possible, if you can use that pre-existing model, you can help inform a timely response. And timeliness in the face of biological invasions, timeliness is very, very important. This notion of a stitch in time. Now, pest risk models are being produced at a fast rate, sort of a blindingly fast rate now. There's been the technologies to go and develop these models. The mechanics of it are widely available. They're cheap, and everyone's doing it. And that's because the ease of use of them now has meant that inexperienced models are also now producing and publishing maps. And the quality of models is highly variable. You get inexperienced people using sophisticated technologies and sort of pressing the button, and the results aren't always what we'd hope. Anyway, so what was our solution to at least some of those problems? Was to go and set up a web-based database of models and their associated publications, and including high-quality output models and a thumbnail map. So the idea is to go and make the models discoverable. The implementation of that, so the entity relationship schema wasn't straightforward. For those who understand, familiar with entity relationship diagrams, we've got lots of naught to many or one to many relationships here. So it's not straightforward. I'm not sure that we've got it perfectly ironed out. The database we used is Pods in WordPress. It's lightweight, flexible, and suitable for what we're doing. Okay, so the way it works, if you go to the International Pest Risk Research Group and log in, so got to join, be a member at this stage to get to this point. If you click down on Resources, Model Database, then on the right-hand panel here, drop-down panel, you get the options here to go and search, browse models, browse taxa publications, and to add models, publications, and taxa, and a taxon. So that's your starting point. The documentation if you just click on model database and leave it at that, it will take you to this page where we document and further down the page. So all the instructions are there. Mostly, there should be minimum need to go and refer to the documentation. But if you want to upload new entries into the database, it works best if you work in this order of adding the taxon, then the publication, and then you add your model where you bring it all together. Okay, we're including ancillary files here, so it's not just the metadata, but we're providing making provision for a free-form zip file. Now we've got to be careful with these zip files, and they will have to be checked to go and make sure that there's nothing malicious in them. Now, in those zip files, we should be giving maps of model results. So, for example, for the examples that we're working through, we've got world maps and continent level maps as well. So, someone coming along wanting to go and use the file, there's a strong possibility that they don't need to go and run the model themselves, that they can just grab their continent level map and use that for their pest risk assessment. Okay, but to take a little further, also you've got the option there to go and include the files used to produce the model. So this is the reproducibility component. So for example, the parameter files, the CXP files for Climax models. Okay, and you can also include files that help the reader assess the robustness of the model. So for correlative species distribution models, you can include fitted response curves for the BITs or maxent models and so forth. So people can look at those and help judge them for themselves what sort of quality and the quality, reliability, and applicability of the model, whether it's fit for purpose. Now, in providing that sort of information, the idea is that it's an opportunity to be helping others. So taking your work and letting other people benefit from it. So it's not just to your initial purpose. So this is recognizing that potentially most risk analysts around the world may not even have access to the resources to go and develop their own maps. Now, tackling that problem is something that of interest to IPRRG. So building capacity in regions of the world that need it, but that's a topic for a different talk. Okay, so browsing for models. This is possibly searching and browsing for models. When you click on that browse for models, you'll get this type of screen. So it will just be a straight listing sorted by the genus and species. If we click on the link icon on the right-hand column next to a species of interest, that then takes us to our model, the model results, and we'll notice the first thing we've got here is the primary publication. And if you click on the red text there, it will take you through to the full details of the publication. With the taxon, it takes you through to the taxon entry, which will give you the sort of phylogenetic relationship around that taxon. If the model only applies to a particular life stage, there'll be an entry there. So far, we haven't come across one of those. The software used, and if there's any secondary publications. And I'll show an example later on where there's the secondary publication. The thumbnail sketch. So this, just being able to go and look at the thumbnail sketch of the model, that may be sufficient to go and satisfy some needs. You can go and see, if you're in Siberia here, you can go and say, not likely to be a problem for of getting Amblyomma variegatum invading. Now the model description down the bottom, that's a free-form text field. As you're entering the information about the model, you can be setting up this entry. You can be adding information there that helps people coming on browsing these models to understand the applicability of the model and whether there are any limitations, what the meaning of it is, what the framing. So you can provide it's effectively an option for giving some quality assurance or quality assessment there. And in here we're saying it was fitted using sparse station data and may need to be updated if using gridded climate data. So with the thumbnails, we've generated those using gridded data, irrespective of how the model was generated. So it's just to say, well, you know, what you see here, it serves its purpose as a thumbnail to give you a vague idea, but don't rely on it too much. Go and consider that you might need to go back to the original model parameters and refit those, tweak those to deal with the idiosyncrasies of the different climate data. Okay, if we had a click through the primary publication, you can see here you've got the links through to where to find it, and if it's appropriate in terms of copyright, you can also upload and attach a PDF of the publication so that someone coming on browsing can just go straight to the file and go and read that for themselves. So yes, if you want to download a copy of the publication, just click on the little acrobat symbol there. With the taxon, you get the phylogeny. And if you want to search, you can just put in the free-form field there with a normal database searching for, you know, species, genus, or the name of the author, or what have you. So when you look at the search results, if you do that search, this is the result that you get. And if you click on the highlighted area up there, the Bactricera decus triono, that will take you through to this window here. Here we go. Voila. So this is another one we tried with Bactricera trioni. It's the sort of the full version. This is the one that's got the example with the secondary publication. So in the model description, you can see there's quite fulsome description. We've got information at the bottom there saying that talking about when that model was applied to a situation in Tasmania and giving some results there. So it's cross-referring there to the secondary publication, the Potter and Kriticos paper. Okay, so the status at the moment. So we've bulk loaded a heap of taxa. So we've just got the taxonomic relationships there. Got 112 publications and 160 ancillary model files. So they're just sitting in the system. They've all been uploaded, but we've only pulled together 21 models at the moment. So we've got full entries there for 21 models. And it's just because that's a little bit of a time-consuming process. And we've started uploading the thumbnail images. So for each of those 21 models, as we create the model entries, we upload the thumbnail images. Now I've got at least one known bug there that the ancillary files are not displaying. I'd say that's a significant bug. Okay, so if you want to contribute material, so at present any IPRRG member can add an entry. So we're democratizing this. Now, when you're doing that, the first thing to do is go and check whether the taxon, publication, and model are already in the database. If they're already in the database, then you're wasting your time going and adding it. Now, if there isn't, then add the taxon first, then the publication, and finally the model to go and stitch it all together, because the model's the element that sits in the middle of that entity relationship diagram. So in order to do it, you'll need the species scientific name and common name and its sort of phylogenetic relationship, what family it's in, a PDF of the publication describing the model if that's available and you're legally entitled to go and share that, a citation reference for the publication, and then the ancillary file, the zip file, and that can include the maps of the model output in PNG or JPEG format, files to generate the model, for example, the parameter files for Climax, any distribution data if you're licensed to share that, and then information that helps the reader understand the robustness or limitations of the model. So we'll come back to this as a separate point. So help wanted. So if you have a hankering to be a database curator, please let Frank or I know if you want to go and help out with that. So in summary, we've created this database repository for these models, and as a rapid method for sharing the models with minimal documentation requirements. So it's suitable for grey literature publications. So for a biosecurity agency, for example, this is an opportunity for the analysts to go and share their information in an efficient and effective way without buying into the all of the effort to go and get a journal paper published. And the model may not be suitable for journal publication, but it may well be fit for purpose for sharing like this. It need not be perfect. It just needs to be useful. So the residual issues, the database doesn't have a clever name. So welcoming your creative suggestions, please. Presently, members can submit the model packages. There's no vetting process. So that's something we're going to have to go and think about. There's no way to indicate the species is modeled using different software in the same publication. So it's just awkward. So each model would require a different entry referencing the same publication. So it's just, yeah, it's not a major problem. It's just a headache for some of those. Very few situations where people have done comparison models in using different software. And this might just be a simple fix, changing that variable to a checklist instead of a selection. Selecting publications when adding models is a little awkward. So when you're adding the model, if you haven't already added the publication, it's a little awkward. So something we can fix fairly easily, I think. We don't have a neat mechanism to address taxonomic synonyms. So that's, and dealing with that could be rather tricky. We don't presently include provision for contact details of the modeler, and I throw that question back to you. Is that a desirable feature? I've spoken to at least one risk analyst who would be someone who would be contributing models into this thing, and he was immediately saying that, yeah, it makes sense for people to be able to go and get back in touch with him to go and talk about the applicability of the model or the limitations. Okay, now there's no mechanism for providing users with a quality rating for models. There was recently a published modeling scheme for correlative species distribution models, though I think the authors felt that it was globally applicable. Doesn't work very well for models of invasive species. And it was focused on the measurable traits, not all of the important traits of a model. So yeah, it's, and going and providing a user quality rating could be rather subjective. Doesn't mean it's not accurate, but yeah, I think there's a thorny issue, this one. Now, the curation process includes an editorial comment, so that model description field, and that should highlight known issues. Okay, so would users of the comments field provide fair and critical comments on models? So each of those entries that we've got there gives you the opportunity to go and comment. So if you're not the person who's created the entry, you can comment on it. So the question is, would users feel enabled or feel comfortable providing fair and critical comments on models in that situation? I don't know the answer to that. Okay, so we'd love constructive criticism before getting too invested in the current implementation. So we've only got 21 models entries now, so making changes now is relatively cheap. Waiting till we've got a couple of hundred and then going and changing the database structure, that becomes more of a headache. So putting this out there now, looking for this constructive feedback. Thank you very much, and I'd just like to acknowledge the efforts of John Keane, who did a lot of the foundation work with implementing the database itself. Noboru Ota, who's generated most of our ancillary files and the thumbnail images to use here, and Aaron Brooks for doing some more work on the database itself. So thank you very much, everyone. Over to you, Frank.
All right. Thank you, Darren. Unfortunately, you will get no applause because of this format, but I appreciate you doing this. We all appreciate you being the guinea pig, so to speak. I do have some questions. I'm going to read those off to you first, but I just want to make one comment that I don't think you captured, but it is something that I'm sure we will be thinking about over the next several months, which is, we're going to have this new resource. It's coming into its I don't know, it'll have stature. It'll take a while, but it'll be there. But we want to make that connection. So when we talk about commentary, we can of course debate how we want to have commentary about individual models, but I think we want to also emphasize to people that being an IPRRG member also gives you access to our fora, and we are definitely going to set up a forum specifically for this kind of issue. So about, pest, it'll be about building models, but also how to put the models into this particular venue. So I think, people, I'm not sure we've come to that yet or exactly how we would do it, but I'm sure you've thought about it, but we will have some way to sort of link those, I don't know, lines of communication. We have the models out there, but it's great. The forum is maybe our best avenue for people to exchange general ideas on about approaches that we maybe can't capture even from a robust collection of individual models. There are these sort of overarching issues. So that's just a comment more than a question.
Right.
All right, so why don't I go ahead and cue these up for you. All right, so here's the first question, Darren. You ready? Oh, these are good.
Yes.
All right, this is from Anonymous. Darren, you mentioned inexperienced modelers. Everybody has to start somewhere. How does an inexperienced modeler get experience without working and publishing a model?
Mostly by working with experienced modelers. It's so, yeah, there's a certain discussion forum around a very popular modeling software, and I won't mention its name, but a really typical entry there is, I'm just coming to the last chapter of my PhD. in molecular biology and my supervisor says I need a model. Help me. Where do I start? That sort of thing. So that's indicative of the notion of crafting a pest risk model, which in the pantheon of models and model types, pest risk models are right up there in the most difficult. So just thinking, oh, I can come at it with no background in modeling, no experience, sort of thing, and just press the buttons. That's you're set up for that's a formula for disaster. So working with experienced modelers is definitely the way I suggest you work it. Look at it as an apprenticeship.
Yeah, so Darren, I think maybe you're lining us up for having to have an IPRRG mentorship program, which it is and it's not a novel idea. We have talked about that in the past. So okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the second question, and it's from Alan McLeod. Is there a preferred way to cite the IPRRG site as a source for storing models? How would we want this? I guess how would we want this out there for people to cite as a source?
Okay, I guess the first thing, it would be nice to go and have a name for the database as the starting point, and then we can pivot off that, the name and then the URL. So as a working, I think maybe just call it the IPRRG Pest Risk Model Database, www.pestrisk.org.
Yeah, I think so. I think what we should do, Darren, is maybe at the top of the interface, we'll just have something on. We can post something.
How to cite.
Yeah, how to cite it. I think that's pretty typical. So we should come up with something. So that would be like one of our early steps. It would be nice to have a catchy name, but at least give something for people to just drop into a document or to drop into an email or a post so that we have it out there.
Right.
Okay. All right. Here's question number 3. This is from Robert Vandendoel. Did you consider adding an organization field to each database entry visible on the specific page, which can also be searched?
Okay. Let's see whether we can get this interactive at all, whether Robert can respond using the chat. So at the moment, the organization is implicit in the publication. So that's where you would normally find that. So my question back to Robert is, where would he see that the organization field would be added in there? Where would he like to see it apparent? So the first question is, no, we hadn't thought about it as a separate field. So the question back is, so quite where was he thinking of adding it? But fully open to suggestions for that.
Okay, I will. I'm going to mark this one for follow-up, and maybe we can come back to it. Or if he has anything he wants to post in chat, I'll check through chat after I go through these queued up questions.
Okay.
Okay. So number 4. This is from Alan. So can the database handle ensemble models, or would each component model need a unique entry? And how would they link to the ensemble?
An ensemble model.
Like I said, these are hard questions.
Thank you for that compound question, that ensemble question about ensembles. So the ensembles are normally run as multiples within an analysis, and then you only see the distilled outputs from that. Unless you're talking about, say, multiple species in the same publication. If that's the case, then yes, each species needs its own its own entry. And one of the examples we've got in there at the moment is by Steinbauer et al., where there is that situation where they publish multiple species in the same application. Sorry, in the same publication. So it's one of those problems with that many-to-one relationship.
Okay, I'm gonna. That is a big question. Alan, we will. I'm sure we'll be revisiting these sorts of issues as this progresses. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. This is from Muriel. Have you thought about using EPO codes to manage taxonomic issues?
We had not. So those EPO codes are an adaptation of one of the chemical companies' codes, if I recall correctly. Happy to add that in, Muriel. I think to make it, yeah, so what we do then is get a copy of the EPO code and the taxon, that list from you, put that into the system, and then when people add the entries, they can look that up and select the appropriate code. Yeah, if people are using the EPO codes widely, then sure. So yeah, Muriel, please contact me offline and we'll add that in.
All right. Okay, next question is from Lencoop. No mention of climate data used, sources, years used in maps, etc. Should this be included or just part of the publication model or publication/model documentation?
Right. No, Len, thanks for that question. I think it's the latter. That was certainly our thinking, that the publication should be covering that level of detail. So we're looking here for discoverability and accessibility. Yeah, but without being comprehensive in the documentation itself. So in the link to the publication, that should allow people to go and access that level of detail. However, in that model description field, if there are important issues that are worthy of bringing to someone's attention right up front, then you've got an opportunity there to go and bring some of that to attention. So if it's if it was fitted to data that was very, very old, for example, then you might bring that to their attention and just go and say that if you want to run this model now, you may need to go and check whether the fit is appropriate. Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've thought about this, and a metadata record for every model, and there's always these challenges with metadata. You'd like them to fill out, think of like geospatial, really highly compliant metadata. They're filling out every single field, but most of the time you don't see that. You hope you do. You don't, and I'm sure these sort of metadata records, that's yet another thing that we'll be developing as we work on this.
Right. In that respect, I think there's a balance that needs to be struck, because perfection will be the enemy of good and getting data into the database. So we're looking here to go and keep the hurdle low for people to go and contribute information here, because if it's too difficult, then other priorities will just come along and they won't add the model into the database. So the vision is for something that doesn't take more than 15-20 minutes to from sort of start to finish.
All right, we'll go on to the next one here. This is from Gabriel in Mexico. He says, does a model have to be published in order to incorporate to the database? And I mean, I think I can answer that. No, it doesn't have to be. As long as you can generate, what it is and provide, sort of a basic record of what it is and how it was done and all that, I think that's fine. We're not looking for things that are formally published or, you know, really anything that's even informally published in government reports or something. We just need we just need documentation on what it is and how it was done.
That's exactly right. So yes, that reference to the grey literature, where we're looking to go and capture as much of that as possible, so that it's discoverable. People may look at that, and you know, even a rough model may be a good starting point for someone else to go and make it a better model. So it's about the sharing development and sharing the fruits of your labor. So there's a very low bar for entry into the database. All that we ask is if a model has problems, that you sort of upfront about those, you know, in the model description field or in the documentation that accompanies it. And that documentation can be, you know, very, very simple.
Well, so I'm going to take that, and I'm going to skip over a question from Roger Day, and we'll come back to that, but I want to just go ahead and move to another question from Martin, and this is, can users retract or edit models if someone suggests improvements? And that's sort of exactly what we want to see happen, but maybe, I don't know, Darren, maybe you can can you explain the mechanism of it right now, if it's formed in any real way that somebody could do that?
Okay, the person entering the entry to start with, I don't think they'll have the option to go back and edit it themselves. We'll have to do that as a back end thing. But there's absolutely no problem with revising models and updating them and adding new entries. And you know, we can make a relationship between those entries.
Okay.
And as you say, Frank, you know, we're looking to go and stimulate the development of models, and that means that it's not a static thing. That most models aren't going to be cast in stone. They'll, you know, as new information comes to light about the biology or ecology of the species, then models can be updated in the light of that information.
All right, so I'm going to jump to a different one. This is a question from Roger Day, and bear with me, it's a little longer here. So, are the models to be included in the database only those that look at potential species distribution and environmental suitability? So, species distribution models, I guess. Or will other types of models that might be used in the PRA process be included in the database? So, for example, models of potential economic consequences if a pest became established, or modeling the effect of possible phytosanitary measures. And I'm going to let you answer that, but of course we would love to have a database with all that stuff in it, but I'm not sure that we have the capacity yet. Like, we don't have the infrastructure to store lots of, I don't know. I'll let you answer that.
Okay. Given that the potential distribution underpins, you know, social and economic, or projections of social and economic impacts, I think the fundamental database we've got here should be able to go and cope with those. And certainly some of the examples that we've got, not already fully in the system, but we do have examples where we've applied potential distribution models to go and answer those questions, and they're definitely going to be included in the database. I think, Roger, there's nothing stopping us from including those, and as Frank says, you know, we would love to include them. I think what we'll do is, as we add them, we will, if we find that we need to adjust the structure to evolve it to go and accommodate anything, then then we'll do that. It's a good question.
All right, I've got one final question that's in the question and answer, and then I'm going to circle back to the chat because I did suggest people could put questions there. So I'll circle back in a second, but this is from Brittany Barker. She says, I may have missed it, but can a person search by region or country? And conversely, could they search for models that are usable at a global scale?
Okay. Answer the first question, no, we don't have, we don't have that. So I think your idea there, Brittany, would be you want to know all of the models that are applicable to the US. So we can't do that at the moment. And sorry, Frank, what was the second part of that question?
Yeah, so conversely, can you search for models that are usable at a global scale?
Okay, so all of them are, well, I'm trying to think of any of them that aren't usable at a global scale. There's certainly some species distribution models that I've come across that, whilst they produce a global model in the publication, it's clear that the results didn't transfer applicably into other regions.
Well, I mean, are we storing via keyword or some other mechanism? Are we storing like what it was designed for, like what the intended regional or the intended, I guess, geographic scale of something was?
No, so that would have to come out in the model description field.
Right. Okay. Well, we could set up theoretically, we could set up some sort of keyword field that but it would have to come from the person submitting it. You know, what they said, what they think the regional or what they think the geographic scale is. And of course that comes with all the caveats of, you know, anyone doing that. But
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And it would add to the cost of putting the data in there.
Yeah.
So we're sort of reluctant to just go and add extra complexity unless it's sort of clear that it's really important and that there isn't already a mechanism for dealing with it. But good question, Brittany.
All right. Okay. So now we've got a couple from chat. One was kind of funny. All right. So, so this is a question from, let's see, I've got one from Martin. He says, I believe comments from secondary users of models would be useful, right? And so this is more of a follow-up, you know, it would allow you a record of these. If you did this, it would also have a record of, it would create a record of the secondary uses. And that would, you know, be one way to measure the value of the database, right? Is this, if you saw something was getting a lot of secondary uses, that would be good. So, yeah, so, you know, I think that is an aspect we really want to develop, to focus on. But, you know, there's a lot to do to get this thing beyond what it is.
Right. I mean, what that does take us into, though, is the need to go and curate those comments. Now, being the community that we are, I don't think we're going to suffer, you know, the same level of problem that, say, Facebook does, in terms of people making malicious comments or what have you. The people who are going to be attracted to the Pest website and the database are likely to be practitioners or what have you. So the comments are likely to be respectful, but we may need to just monitor that.
Yeah, I mean that's always the way it is. But I feel like we're pretty upstanding and responsible and respectful group. So I think they should generally be civil.
Right.
All right.
My question in the presentation was more about whether people would feel enabled to go and comfortable to go and leave the remarks, or whether that would just be a feature that just people would just politely ignore.
I don't know. That might we might have to sort of take a test case perspective and see. But I think people would be willing to comment. It's more a question, Darren, it may really be more a question of, do people have time to do one more review out there? All right, so we only have a few more minutes, so I want to just get through a couple of quick things from the chat. Alan mentioned, and yeah, so the epoch Bayer codes, is that what
Thank
you're
you.
looking for?
That was what I was looking for, yes.
Yeah, and Muriel said epoch codes are open access and that she'll be in contact soon.
Thank you, Muriel.
Len Coop says, should we wait a week or two for the next database version before submitting our 16 models?
No, go for it, Len. And we look forward to feedback on the experience to see whether we can improve it. I know you've got a background in this sort of area, so we'll look forward to the feedback. I'm sure it'll be frank and fearless.
All right, and Robert, he did respond. He says, regarding his question, he says, I'm not sure how important such a field is. I was thinking from the user perspective, it can be handy to see the organization earlier on without having to click on the link for the paper, right? So sometimes it's useful to have it up front.
Right. The other question there that just occurred to me was, most publications I've ever crafted are multi-organization. The attribution fields to the authors. Okay, we'll definitely think about it, Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so just a couple things to wrap it up here. Let's see. Alan says comments, links to mentoring. I mean, I kind of think that was part of our long-term roadmap, was to establish some sort of mentoring programs, and then so the only other thing I'll say here is another comment from Martin. Given the home countries to audience members, and I'll tell you about the poll results in a second. Given the home countries to audience members, I would suggest IPRRG team up with perhaps CABI to advertise this database, and I think we'll partner up with anybody who's willing to spread the word. So yeah, thanks for that.
Yes. And Roger's from CABI. Roger Day.
Yeah. So I think, I think this is a new initiative, a lot of work, Darren. Yeah, you should please give my personal thanks to John for the work. That's greatly appreciated. And then I'm going to, since we only have 2 minutes, I'm just going to close out, say, are you a member? Of the people who responded to the poll, we had 23 responses and 15 of them are members. 7 are no, and 1 is not sure, don't remember. See, I told you that was we needed to have that row on the chart. So, okay, well, if you were the person who was unsure or don't remember, just reach out to me or Darren or anybody, and I can check to see if you're in the database, and I can reset your password, because I'm guessing if you don't remember if you're a member, you definitely don't remember if you are in fact a member that you have a password. So, and I think that's it. And lots of thanks. And
thank you, everyone.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So Darren, I think that's it as far as the question and answers. Everything else, you have 1 minute. Do you have anything else you want to say?
Thank you, everyone, for attending, and thank you, Frank and Melanie, for making this go so smoothly. And thanks for all the questions and the feedback. And please, if anyone's got any ideas for a snazzy name, we're all ears. So thank you.
Yes, and from me, thanks. I will be in touch with. I will make it available so that this will be recorded and will be out there. I will make the links available and tell people how to get to it. Other than that, keep your eyes peeled for the next one in the series.
Indeed. Keep safe, everyone.
Yes, thank you.